This is tutorial 2-2, creating points and polygon maps using quantitative attributes in the GIS Tutorial 1 Basic Workbook. We're going to start off this tutorial with its own map, so we're going to launch the program, and when you get to the Getting Started window, click for Browse for More. Then you're going to want to make sure that you browse up to the main folder, go into Maps, and choose Tutorial 2-2. Unlike the first tutorial in this chapter, this one comes with layers already loaded. Extent is always a little far off, so I'm going to go up to Bookmarks, and I'm going to use the 48 states. Now, they've gone ahead and done some of the symbology for us. You would not normally see something like this if you just added data to your map. We'll begin by right-clicking the U.S. counties and going to Properties. Remember, you can also double-click to open it. We're going to be working in the symbology, and this time we're going to be working in quantities, and we're going to be using graduated colors. You could also use graduated symbols, where you choose the sizes of the symbols and the range. You can also use proportional symbols and dot density, but we'll touch on those later. So for graduated colors, you're going to set the value field to vacant, and that's located down here. And they want us to use the white to black color ramp. If you have difficulty telling different colors from each other, it might be useful to right-click on the color ramp, and you can uncheck graphic view. And here, now, instead of just the colors, you actually have the names for the color ramps. Some of them are the actual colors, like this is black to white, and others will use what they're often used for, like elevation 1, elevation 2, cold to hot diversion, condition number, and other fields that they're commonly used in. We have temperature down here, slope. To turn it back on, you just go to Graphics and make sure that it's checked. Next, we're going to look at the classification. Right now it's using natural breaks, which looks at the data and finds out where there are natural gaps in the data, and it creates classes based on those. This is a very nice classification method for data that is not normally distributed, like population data. We're going to click the Classify button, and in the classification window we can see how the data looks. And right now, if we look in the preview, it will give us a histogram of our data. It's a little difficult to see, but these blue lines are where the class breaks occur. And if we come over here and click on one, it will highlight it red, and it will also tell you how many features are in that class. As mentioned before, the natural breaks classification looks for natural gaps in data. Right here, if we look at the histogram, it placed that first one where you kind of have a little gap between the values. And here, it picked another one. Now, it's not always like a distinct gap. It's also where there's just great enough change. And down here, it's more difficult because there's just not many features. But when we look at the break values, you can see that some of the class ranges can be extreme. The values are changing by a multiple of 3. For example, 5,000 to 17,000, 17,000 to 42,000. And this one's more than doubling, from 42,000 to 88,000. And then this one is going from 88,000 to 227,000. And if we click on each value, it will tell us how many elements are in each class. So this one has 449 features. So we can see that there is a huge drop-off from the first. And this only continues. It goes down to 112 in the third, 36 in the fourth, and finally only 11 in the final class. And this is going to be important because when we go up here to change to quantile, that the book wants, and there are other classification methods. We have manual, we have equal interval, defined interval, geometrical interval, and standard deviation. Now, right off the bat, you can see a lot of the blue lines are clustered right close to each other. And if we look at the values, it goes 679 to 1291, so it's about doubling. Then 1291 to 2377, again, it's about doubling. Then 2377 to 5118, again, close to doubling. But then it goes from 5118 to 227,796. But if we click on each one of these, we can see that the first class now has 644 features. The second class has 645 features. The third has 644. The fourth has 643. And finally, the last one has 643. So what the quantile method does is it looks at all our features and evenly divides them into each class. So each class is equally represented. This is a very good method if you want to look at how features are ranked rather than focus just on the value, but how they rank among other features. We're going to keep 5 classes, and what this means is that the top 20% are going to be in the 5th class, the lowest 20% is going to be in the 1st class, and then each other class is going to have 20% of the features. That percentage would change if we came up here and changed the number of classes, and as you can see, you can have anywhere from 1 to 32. We're going to click OK. I'm going to get rid of that. And we're back to our classification. And up here you can see that classification has changed. You can change the number of classes in here as a little shortcut, but we're going to keep it 5. We're dealing with vacant homes. Now, it's weird to see decimal places for this because you don't have a percentage of a house. You just have a whole value. So what we're going to do is you're going to left click on label. And this is going to open up some options. And we're going to want to format our labels. This will open up the number format window. And in here we can change the number of decimal places from 6 to 0. Click OK. Now we see that we have whole numbers, much easier to read. But we are getting into the thousands, and sometimes it helps to have that thousand separator. So we're going to click, go back into format labels, and make sure that we check the show thousand separator. We're going to click OK. Now it's a little bit easier to read because you can tell that this is a very large number. Now the book is using a reverse ramp, so I'm going to scroll down here. Okay. So there are 2, black to white. And the only thing that changes is one is white to black, and the one up here is black to white. So we want the white to black. But if I chose the one that was up here, I could also left click on symbol and flip the symbols. But I'm going to come down here and choose the one that they want. Go up here. So our first value should be white and our last class should be black. We're going to click OK. And now we have our map. As you can see, there are patterns. Right here in the center of the country, you have very low values. But you have to take into account there's lower population, there's more rural areas, very open spaces that might not even have any kind of living area. Then over here, right along the coast, you see that there's a lot of high values, and it's the same for Florida, Michigan, and the East Coast, with a little bit of scattering here in the southeast. Now, you can see that there are a lot of cities especially located around the dark values. But let's see if population has an impact maybe on this. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click US cities. And since we were using the symbology tab, we're already there. And we're going to click on quantities. And we're going to use graduated symbols. We're going to use the POP 2007. And we're going to click the symbol under template. And this will affect all the symbols over here. So we're going to change this from what it is by default to circle 2. And we're going to make it Mars red, which is the third one down in the second column. We're going to click OK. Again, it's using natural breaks. That's always the default. So we're going to go up here and we're going to use the same that we're using for US counties, vacant housing, and use quantile with 5 classes. And if we click over here, we can see that they're using roughly either 12 or 11 features in each class. So we're going to click OK. Now the book says that we should click under the label title and format our labels to get rid of the decimal places. But I don't know if this is because I'm using a newer version that this might set it for the default for the whole map now. But you did used to have to do this for each layer. So if you do have decimal places here, you're going to want to click on label, go to format labels, reduce this to 0, but we're also going to add in our 1000 separator. We're going to click OK, and you can see that, to me, a large circle does not necessarily mean higher vacancy. There are quite a few over here in California where there are, but there are also some big circles in Texas where there's just a few counties. This would be more useful if we had more cities. This has a very small number. And I just want to open up the attribute table for this real quick. And we're using the POP 2007. I want to look at the properties. Now this is a long type. So this can only have integers in it, which mean whole numbers. So that's probably a reason I didn't see decimal places. If I come into US counties, let's see if vacant is also a long. So we're going to come down here. I'm going to right click vacant, go to properties, and it's set as a double. Now what a double is it allows for fractions. So you can have decimal places. So I believe that is why we had to change the labels for vacancies to not show the decimal places, but wasn't the case for US cities because of the type of field. The program was able to read and instinctually know that a long field will not have decimal places, whereas a double will. We're going to go and I'm going to click Save As. I'm going to browse to my exercise folder, go to chapter 2, and save. And that's it for this video.